This is the most brilliant period in human history. The human beings right now on Earth are extraordinary. Let's turn to that brilliance and imagination, creativity, and care and compassion that is flourishing in the world, that it may be unseen and unknown and ignored by powers that be.
You're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matt Matern, your host. I've got Paul Hawken on the show. Paul is a noted environmentalist. He has written 8 books, 5 have hit the New York Times bestseller list. His current book, Carbon, the Book of Life, is coming out very soon, and I think everybody should read it. Paul authored Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. That was published in 2021. Became a bestseller in 1 week. He's been on the Today Show, Larry King, NPR, Bill Maher, profiled in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, WAPO, the Washington Post. Has written for the Harvard Business Review. Did a program with the King of Sweden. So, Paul, you've been everywhere. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. You did mention drawdown. I'm the author of Drawdown, and that is in, I think, 18 countries around the world.
Project Drawdown.
Project Drawdown. I mean, I don't. I have some criticisms of my own book, including that one, but nevertheless, I did author it.
I bought that one in the UN Bookstore. It's one of the few climate books that is in the UN Bookstore. So kudos to you for getting in the UN Bookstore.
I didn't do that. The thing I'm most proud of that and Regeneration, both were taught from 4th grade, to MIT graduate school.
Wow.
And I think it's because I was raised a photographer. I was surrounded by artists, when I grew up in Berkeley. And I think it's going to be imagery, because the kids, the 4th graders or higher, could immediately have a response to an image, and then that could invite them into text or, understanding what they were seeing or what it meant and something like that. So I guess that's why, but kids use it for plays and things like that. They become it as a refrigerator in a cardboard box. Things like that, and say, talk about refrigerants.
Well, one of your books, Ecology of Commerce, was voted as the #1 text for the business and the environment by, it was like 67 schools. That was written back in 1999. I wanted to comment on that and say, hey, has that kind of promise come true, essentially, in that commerce has now driving the environmental revolution in some respects with electric cars, wind turbines, solar, and the like? Have we seen what you were foreshadowing back in 1999? How far are we from kind of hitting that tipping point where business really takes up the energy to take us to a cleaner world?
It's an excellent question. You notice I titled it The Ecology of Commerce. I did not title it The Ecology of Corporations. The big, big difference. Commerce is ancient, sacred. I mean, it has brought people together for thousands and thousands and thousands of years and so forth. It's based on, credit means to believe, it's based on trust and based on exchange, based on connection. Corporations, I would say the situation of business today is worse than it was when I wrote The Ecology of Commerce, much worse, because the tempo and rate and ubiquity of corporate extraction of the living world is probably tripled since then, with no apologies at all to the living world, the children of the future, current generation. So I would say it's worse. Did the Ecology of Commerce have a big effect on students and things like that? Yeah, I think it did, from what I can tell. But in terms of, if you just step back and look at the flow of capital what we've seen since 1993 is this a huge concentration of capital into fewer and fewer hands and corporations and so forth. And that power is being exercised, certainly commercially, but politically, as we can see very well right now. And I just feel like that's sort of infected the world, that there's sort of a thing, because people feel insecure, and they're right to feel insecure, by the way. And so it almost like amplifies people's sense of insecurity, in the sense that they have to get things for them now. They have to get more and be safe and all that sort of stuff. Because I think most people in the world do not feel safe. And so, the ecology of commerce is really about understanding the connectedness between the living world, and the commercial world, and that they're inextricably connected. You don't have to act that way. You can act as if nature is, something else, distinct and separate. But my question would be, when did the divorce occur, and what was the separation agreement? I wasn't really there when it happened. It looks like there was no separation agreement. We are totally objectifying the living world, and that thinking, Matt, is what caused and is causing the problem. That sense of separation, like objectifying, and we do it with climate. We do it with climate. We've objectified climate. We've objectified carbon. And that's why I wrote Carbon, the Book of Life, which is like, hold on. No, that is the cause, and the idea that some of the market is going to save us is also sort of a fascinating belief, because basically for the last 500 years, we've been selling off the living world to the highest bidder. So if we think that somehow we can use that mechanism, to restore the planet, I would no, we can't. You don't sell off the living world to the highest bidder, or you don't, and that goes to carbon credits and biodiversity credits, which is just, to me, well intended. I appreciate it. It's kind. There should be no such thing as a market. We should have every corporation bending over backwards to create carbon credits, or to create situation forests and land use practices, that sequester carbon. No question about that. But somehow should they be selling it so that they can then run something else over here with coal, gas, or oil, and then they equilibrate it? They're equal? No, it's to me, with all due respect, it's bizarre.
So, what do you think is a better tool? Would a carbon tax be a better tool than carbon credits?
Carbon tax would be great, because it would start to get closer to appreciating what the real price is. We don't pay the real price in carbon fuels, coal, gas, and oil. I'm not suggesting that there. I'm not suggesting that there is some lever, some mechanism. If we just pull it hard enough, What I'm suggesting is we don't see the world in a way that's going to help. So a carbon tax is like, so you're taxing it, but you're still, trying to grow as fast as possible using more resources, and you're paying a tax. Okay, the tax goes to who? So it does definitely give people a price signal. No question, that's good. They might change their consumptive patterns, but it doesn't change the underlying system at all.
So tell us, what is your thought as far as how we could shift the way people see the world, the natural world, as not separate from themselves, but that they're a part of it, and that polluting any part of the world is polluting our own backyard and poisoning ourselves. And unfortunately, that isn't maybe the way we've been taught to look at it.
Right. Well, first of all, I want to say categorically, I'm not here to solve things. I every time I turn around, somebody's got a solution, and do it this way, listen to me, follow this. It's like, I read it, I look at it, there's some good stuff there. The more profound changes have come from people like Bill McKibben, who had out of the program. But when he wrote End of Nature, that book lives on to this day. And it's really about a way to see the world. If you don't see the world in a way that is proximate to actually how it functions or what it is, if you don't see the world as being inseparable to you, then you're just trying to fix it, which is a very male verb, and I admire that. I was a grease monkey. I race motorcycles. I love to fix things. So I think fix is a good verb. But but you don't fix the living world. You don't fix climate, Um, and that mentality is still placing it as something else separate and distinct and other from you, instead of actually, you know, realizing, the extraordinary, intricate, beautiful complexity of a human being, just one of 3.4 trillion creatures on the planet, by the way. So, and we sort of like, oh yeah, it's biodiversity. We have a word. It's again like, stop, hold on. Yeah, it's diverse, but so are we. I mean, we have 40 trillion microbes that actively, run the ship, our life. Without them, we die. Okay, you have one cell that has 10 trillion atoms in it, and 1.2 trillion of them are carbon. And inside our cells is basically, it's a chemical factory. It's chemistry. It is not alive inside. It is alive on the outside. Now, just stop right there. Wait a minute. You mean inside the cell is not technically alive? No, it's chemistry. Good chemistry. Amazing chemistry. The cell itself is alive with sensors. So right there is kind of like a miracle. It goes back, obviously a couple of billion years, but the point being is that that's the beginning of life, and all life exists in community without exception. There is no exception. It doesn't exist some other place or how or needs. And so, to me, we're just inundated with very sincere in many cases, but ideas and memos and solutionism, out there that really still separate us, from appreciating who we are as an organism and how interdependent we are to all other forms of life. And as I said in the book, individuals only exist in cowboy westerns, they don't exist. Yeah.
Right. We've kind of been sold this bill of goods that we're separate, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
um, and that keeps us kind of the divide and conquer. As if we're all separate and individual entities, we kind of are easier to manipulate than maybe we would be as a group, or seeing ourselves as a part of a group, or dependent upon all of the other members of our community.
When you mention community, it's the community of life, all of life, not just our community, not just the human community. And I think that is what's missing in the conversation. And again, we have the biodiversity crisis, we have the climate crisis. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as a climate crisis. It can't. The climate doesn't pay attention to what we can do. Okay? It's the climate. The atmosphere can't have a crisis. And so when we have people saying, and they say it everywhere, we're fighting, we're combating, we're going to tackle, the climate crisis. I'm like, really? I mean, it's like Don Quixote. Come on. It's like he might as well be on his horse with his thing going after the windmill, because, again, that it's just emblematic of how we, have objectified the living world and so forth. And now once we've objectified it, we can manipulate it, change it, or try to. And, instead of saying, gosh, wow, we are a miracle, our bodies are miracles, and we live in a miracle. And I don't mean that in a religious way or not in a religious way, any way that makes sense to you, it's a miracle. And so appreciating that, gratitude for that, respect for that is the beginning of how we change where we are today and get back to a pathway that is regenerative. And that's why regeneration, what we have to do on this planet is create more life. And that which does not really has to be addressed and stopped. And now, how do we do that and provide with, the goods and services that people need? Well, let's talk about it. 6 billion people don't excuse me, do not get the goods and services they need. So that's a good starting point. And a good, I don't know how many, millions of millions get way, 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 way too much, and taking so much for themselves. And so that's a good conversation to have, which is, do we want to be a we or not? If we don't, well, it shows. I mean, because we're not. But if we're going to survive, if we're going to thrive, if we're going to stay here, if we're going to be the civilization we keep praising ourselves to be, then we have to become a we with respect, dignity, purpose, and meaning.
So, one of the things that jumped out at me was talking about gratitude. I do a gratitude pose every day. Kind of, it's a yoga pose, the goddess pose, where you spread your arms and meditate kind of as I'm doing it about my 36 trillion cells, and vibrating essentially to the gratitude frequency. And I have turned a number of friends and family members onto this practice and, enjoy doing it. And I guess I kind of just appreciating that you seem to be on the same wavelength, that is a valuable practice, and that we need to expand that. We need to expand our gratitude for life and the natural world.
Why not? It's a better life.
Yeah.
You are better off. I mean, to individuate it for a minute, just how do you feel? What do you think? What do you see? How do you see the world? I mean, starting from the framework and the foundation of gratitude, such a more interesting world out there. We have the different modalities, where we're criticizing, where we're, angry, where we're fearful, where we're all the other kinds of emotions, which are there to protect us. So I don't want to downplay them as emotions, but to live there in constancy is hard. It's hard. It wears us down and so forth, And so I just think, Matt, obviously, I think the climate narrative, the climate movement has failed miserably in its communication. Mm-hmm. And I'll throw myself in there with it, really. So I'm not pointing fingers, but it just doesn't pencil out, and it doesn't engage. And so after 50 years of sort of broad understanding, that is in science and the media and so forth, of a warming atmosphere, which is really what we're talking about here. Way less than 1% of people in the world do anything at all every day. They do nothing. The other 99+%. So if you were in a corporation, a company, and you had an advertising program, and you say, after 50 years, we've only our market share has gone up that much. You say, let's talk about how we're communicating to our customers, And so it's the same thing. I mean, if the climate movement is going to be effective, it's got to get out of its jargon shoes, and like net zero. What does net zero mean? What does carbon neutrality mean? These impossible things in the living world. You can't have carbon neutrality. There is no net zero. And it's like abundance is possible, but not net zero. So, things are possible that are extraordinary and wonderful, and we want to move towards. But you do that by seeking cause and not a cure. You don't go in. We have an allopathic climate movement. We're going to treat symptoms down, down river, down wind, down stream, instead of going upstream and say, well, what's the cause? But are we going to make direct air capture machines, 20 million of them all over the world, to suck the air, out and then absorb the carbon, liquefy the carbon, and then pump it in pipelines down to geological formations? Do people actually think that's a solution? And again, I'm not appealing to emotion here, I'm appealing to physics, which is that we all know what entropy is. You burn wood, you get ash. That's entropy. Energy only goes one direction. It doesn't go backwards. And so everything we have in the atmosphere that has increased over the last 200 uh, years from the combustion of coal, gas, and oil is entropy. It's like the ash. Carbon dioxide is like the ash of combustion. You know, the carbon in the wood or the oil is combined with oxygen and makes CO2. Okay, it's up there, fine. So, you know, but the idea that we can fix, and I put that in quote marks, the entropy of the past by having entropy on the surface of the earth to suck in you know, the air and liquefy it and ship it and so forth is bizarre. It's not like unquestionable. No, it's not correct. It is bizarre because you're saying entropy doesn't fix entropy. You can't make a cow out of a cow patty. Okay. It doesn't work that way. And life works the other way, you know? And so billions are pouring into this idea. Well, where does the energy come from for DAC? It comes from, they say, oh, well, use renewable energy. Renewable energy is not renewable, with all due respect. Sunlight is current, yes, current solar income. Okay, that keeps coming. It's not even renewable. It just keeps coming. Great. Solar panels, give them 25 years. You got to throw them away. You know, a recycle. We don't even recycle solar panels yet. You know, and same with wind turbines. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. By the way, I have solar in my house. You know, I have no natural gas. I mean, I'm a good, good boy. You know, everything I do. My car is a hybrid, but it's almost 15 years old. So
Wow.
the best thing I can do actually is keep my car running and drive it very, very little. So right now, not to buy a Tesla, you know, which is huge, huge footprint, you know. So, but again, like, how do we get down this path where we thought that, you know, engineers and frankly greedy entrepreneurs, you know, could figure out ways to fix, you know, global warming with technologies that actually don't fix it at all.
Well, it's you know, it's fascinating the way you're talking about it, and that the climate movement is allopathic and kind of trying to treat the symptoms, and the net zero is not a, you know, it could never happen essentially because we're going to be
Shouldn't
creating some emissions.
it?
Uh,
Well, net zero, net of what, first of all, and what emissions, and if it's about combustion, yeah, we should stop that. But you're not going to measure. There's 100, you know, million gigatons of carbon cycling. You know, the carbon cycle. You know, where are we going to draw the line? You know, because that most of it's coming from the earth, from soil, from forests, from the oceans, and so forth. You know, and yet we have our carbon cycle too, and so forth. And so we're going to get to net zero. Then what? By the time we get to net zero in 2050, I mean, ppm of CO2 and other greenhouse gases, the atmosphere will be in the 500s. Now, and it'll be climate chaos on Earth. It'll be chaos in terms of water, heat, floods, drought, fire. So that's a goal. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, we got the net zero. Well, what happened? Oh, Argentina burned down. I mean, I'm sorry I'm making stuff. I would never laugh at fire or stress or harm. But I'm just saying, uh, well, really? You know, I mean, again, no one talks about consumption. No one talks about cause. There's a wonderful thing by Desmond Tutu, where he talks about being on a river and seeing these bodies kind of live humans sort of being rushed down the river and they can't swim and they're, you know, and you go in and you save them, you know, and you go, then you look, oh God, there's another one. You keep going in and saving people who are, you know, being uh, sucked and drawn down the river. And then finally somebody says, why don't we go upstream and see who's throwing them in?
yeah.
Yeah. If we don't go upstream, then we'll never get to where we want to go. If we don't get the cause, there absolutely is no cure.
So, do you see cause being just living sustainably as individuals, meaning cutting our own carbon footprint, cutting our own use of energy, or cutting our own use of plastics and the like, being kind of the driver of this culturally and a necessity, or public policy being a bigger driver, such as the IRA or things like the banning of the internal combustion engine by California and a number of other states.
Again, we have to go upstream because most of the language around there is like policing, quitting, stopping, are things that don't really light people up. Those aren't verbs to go, oh, I'm so excited. Wait, oh, I'm quitting, stopping, losing, getting rid of, it's like really. So if we're not talking about a world of abundance, that actually regeneration is more, not less, because what the climate movement is talking about is less, less, less. I understand it. It makes sense, in terms of chemistry, in terms of physics. Okay. So I'm not, but the thing is not that like, okay, this is what you can do for the climate. That rhetoric has been around for 30, 40 years, this is what you should do, and then you're like, I mean, if you're a Catholic, it's really helpful because then you already have built-in guilt. So you make people feel guilty about the way they live. Okay. What about a rhetoric? What about the human imagination, which is, how can we do this in such a way that everything benefits? Okay, as opposed to stopping, quitting, or reducing what we do so that there's less harm. Do you want to wake up in the morning and say, it's an amazing day. I'm going to do a little bit less harm today. I mean, nobody wakes up that way. We are human beings. We respond to imagination, to challenge, to purpose, to meaning, and to connection. And so as long as we have like I say, a rhetoric that's about stopping, it won't work. It hasn't worked, obviously.
Well, tell us about your new book, Carbon, the Book of Life. What encouraged you to write it, and what do you think the impact, or what's your hoped impact for it?
Well, hopium is not one a word I use much. Uh, in my Buddhist training, hope is the pretty face of fear. You can't have hope unless you have a fear. So
I've read that in your friend Stephen Mitchell's book, the Tao Te Ching. Hope is as empty as fear.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Because then, you're hoping, well, okay, then what? So I don't hope anything for the book. I love the book, and I loved writing it, and I love sharing it. And I'm already getting a lot of responses to it. But it comes out March 18th, but a lot of people got it beforehand from the publisher. And Bill McKibben's comment, it's endlessly, endlessly fascinating. That was part of his comment, blurb for the book. Mm-hmm. That is what I wanted. That was to move away from the objectification of carbon, of global warming, of climate change, all these things, and introduce the reader to the miracle of life, and with your feet on the ground. This is good science. I'm not, this is not, fairy tale stuff. And but to create a sense of awe and wonder about who we are and where we live and who we live with and what is our true community on the planet, but do so in such a way that fascinates the reader. But some people ask me what makes a good book. I said, there's only one thing. What is it? You turn the page. You want to turn the page. Otherwise, it's not a good book. Then somebody else can say, oh, this is a really good book, but if nobody reads it, it's not really great. So for me, it's always about writing in such a way, that people watch on the page. And it comes from just the same things I've shared with you, just observations of the climate movement, of the idea that we can decarbonize. That's another cute phrase. Uh, the language, the lingo, the parlance, the IPCC, the idea that BECS is going to work, which is bioenergy carbon capture systems, which we plant forests around the world the size of India, and then we cut them down and we burn them, and that's our energy, clean quote quote energy, and then we have carbon capture systems on the smokestacks or the flues to capture the carbon. That's back. And IPCC, the Independent Governmental Panel on Climate Change, is saying we can't get there without BECS. Well, what's there? You know what I mean? I'm questioning what there is, and 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 really saying, do we have any idea where here is, where we are right now? And can we look at that with a new lens, a new way of being human, and which is a great thing, by the way, of course, but being human in a way that lights us up, that gives us a sense of, like I say, meaning, dignity, purpose, And so, sure, absolutely, to your question about cutting back, I mean, yeah, being aware of one's impact of consumption, what one's buying, taking, and the waste streams that occur, if you do that, are really, really good to know. But it's really much more about designing a life that is better for you and your neighbor and your children and your children's children. That's what we're talking about. And those are conversations and questions and that we should be having, and we are. I mean, regenerative communities all over the world right now. Just growing up, they're small. I live in California, lived here all my life, and seen lots of fires. And the one thing about fires is that when it's over, you go, oh my God, it's like it's just charcoal. Everything's gone, right? And then the rain comes, and in the spring, you start to see grass, green, super green, from all the food from the ash from the trees. You see wildflowers that actually haven't bloomed for 50 or 100 years because they needed heat in order to crack open the carcass. I mean, you see it's so beautiful. And I feel like we're burning down. I mean, I think the earth I don't mean with fire, I'm doing that too, but culturally and our children, how we educate, excuse me, how we live, and we're burning this place down, and that is depressing, and that makes us feel bad, and guilty and all that sort of stuff. Okay, but I feel at the same time, it's understandable that actually we're seeing the grasses and the forests and the wildflowers and the animals that come to it. It's just coming back to Earth right now in 10,000s of little groups or organizations you never hear about. They're not charismatic. They don't make the headlines. People don't write about them. You get down underneath and you'll see a regeneration movement. It doesn't use the word necessarily, doesn't have to, but it's about creating more life out of it. It's like looking at themselves, at their group, at their community, at their farm, and whatever it is that they're involved with and so forth, and saying, how can we do this in such a way that at the end of the day, there's more life instead of less? And that's the question, that's the conversation, and that is the only direction that was going to make any sense, because it encompasses everything. And say only direction, what do you mean? There's lots of directions. No, it encompasses everything. Creating more life is what we're here to do. And that's what everything you see. I'm looking out the window at the forest. That's what the living world does.
Well, it's a beautiful, view to say, hey, we're creating more life than we're killing off. And it's certainly a question to live into. All of us can ask that question every single day, every single moment. That's a relevant question to ask. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and I greatly appreciate the work that you've done for all of us and for the community. So keep on doing it. And everybody go out and buy Carbon, the Book of Life. Sounds like it's yet another bestseller in the making.
Matt, thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks for putting up with me and listening to all my counter criticism of the climate movement and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't mean we don't talk about it. Doesn't mean we don't share the same values. I mean, what we do, people care, but also we want to be effective. We want to make a difference, and we all need to talk about what difference that's going to make and how to make it. Yeah. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Well, appreciate that, and I think that it's so noteworthy to listen to somebody who's been involved in this for decades, 50 years, and hear what your perspective is, and give the analysis. Hey, the climate movement has failed in many ways, and we need kind of that bucket of cold water thrown on us to wake us up to say, hey, that didn't work. What can we do? How should we shift our focus?
Yeah, this is a big conversation that we all need to have. And I use the we, that, but when I say that, I mean those who care, those who devote their lives or part of their lives or the way they act on a daily basis and are concerned. Mothers and fathers and children and grandparents and Native people and non-Native people. We need to have a talk.
But I think it's a lot more persuasive when we talk about things in how are we going to create more life? How do we create more abundance? That's a conversation that gets maybe an ear open versus we're going to take this away from you.
Yeah, or we're going to stop harming, which is right. Of course, you can't create more life if you are harming it at the same time. But again, get it definitely to understand what you do that harms that you don't even understand. You're not intentionally doing it. You're just being you. That is very, very important to understand. There's many people, books and things that will share what that is, but to orient yourself to create more life, then it's like okay, but then immediately, as you point out, raises the question of, well, aren't I? I said, no, you're not. And it's like, I didn't know that, okay. And there's things you can change immediately, and there's things you can't. Let's be honest. There's things you can't. You're locked in. But it doesn't mean you don't know about it. And then you think about it and see possibilities that you didn't see before.
Well, I think that also struck me, the value of imagination in the environmental movement, and as individuals, all of us kind of reimagining our place in the world, and that is a powerful use of imagination, and I really appreciate you bringing that out.
I say very clearly in Carbon, this is the most brilliant period in human history. The brilliance is extraordinary. So I'm not going around with a sackcloth going, oh man, we screwed up and we're, that's the end of this one. No. Are there things ending that should? Yes. Are there things ending that should not? Yes. But the human beings right now on Earth are extraordinary. And so I don't want to come off as sort of saying, well, Homo sapiens is really, screwing up and come on, get your shit together. No. I mean, I'm saying is that let's turn to that brilliance and imagination, creativity and care and compassion that is flourishing in the world, that it may be unseen and unknown and ignored by powers that be and corporations and Davos and all that sort of stuff. I don't care about that. I care about what is arising, and what's arising is extraordinary.
It truly is. And thank you again for being on the show, and look forward to following your work as we go forward and collaborating with you as well.
Good. Thanks so much, man. Take care.